Hi there everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Heidi McGinty, and I do several roles. I'm a mother, I'm also an advisory teacher, and I also I'm the co-founder of Gradebuster Study and Tutorial Centre. So it keeps me busy, keeps me out of mischief. I get many parents asking me, oh, what can I do to help my child? What can I do to bring them on? And so I thought maybe I'd just share a couple of things that I'm doing this half term with my sons, and especially as they start reaching that teenager area. You know, sometimes they can be harder to reach. So yeah, I thought I would share. One of the biggest things that I get is it might be a couple of weeks towards the GCSE exams or SATs equivalents if you're in America, and parents will contact me and say, oh, my son or daughter's not very good at this, you know, what can you do, get them through their GCSEs? And I think, oh gosh, you know, please could you, you know, I get like a little bit of a sinking feeling in my heart, because I think, gosh, you know, there's only so much you can do in a few weeks, but if only you'd come to me earlier, we could have done so much more. But it is what it is. So my message to you guys out there, if you have a child or daughter and they are going to take their SATs or GCSEs or high school graduation exams next year, my message is, you know, start now. I have a son now. He is currently 15 years old. He will be taking his GCSEs May and June 2019, and I'm already starting to get him prepared for that. Start the revision, start the practice now. And I know some of you are thinking, whoa, it's a year away, you must be mad. Well, I'm probably a little bit mad, but the reality is if we start now, it's little and often. It's that drip feed effect. And I don't know about with your kids, but for my kids, little is better than spending hours and just trying to shove it all in that information. I find it a much more positive experience for them and for myself to be able to manage and keep on top of it. So I go for 15 minutes at a time, and that kind of works. So this half term, I don't know about your sons and daughters, but mine tend to have assessment exams after the half-term break. So I kind of know the half-terms for us is kind of study and revision. So the kind of things I do for my boys is I get them a folder for starters, and what I do is I print out their exam timetable that's coming up and put that on the front, and also they fill in, you know, all the I don't know if you can see that. They fill in all the subjects on the colour coding. And of course, you know, it's teaching them organisational skills. For example, the French. I know he has to do a written piece in his French exam. So it will be, I've been given, fortunately, from the teacher, the topics that he could choose from. You know, a visit to a safari park, food and drink, your family, where you live. And he chooses one. Now, French isn't my greatest forte, I have to say. So how do we get around this barrier? Well, what he does is he writes it in English first and then just types it onto a translator on the internet. And then wham bam, you have an absolutely perfect French copy. And then he just practices and learns that. So that, I think, works really well. I don't know whether it's what you're meant to be doing, but it kind of works for us. He's been doing history. He's got a history exam coming up, and I know it's going to be, we've been told it's about Stuarts and Revolution. So actually what I did, I just went online to find something. Interestingly enough, I found this. He was given it by his teacher, but I also found it on the internet. And it says year 7 here, but actually on the internet it says year 8. And it's all about Stuarts and the Revolution. So I just, you know, looked at that. So, for example, he had to find out about King Charles I. And I said to him, I said, now, Christopher, you've been learning about King Charles I at school. Tell me what you've learned. What do you know? Well, he just looked at me a bit stunned and said, well, I don't really listen in lessons, so I'm not really sure I know anything. So I'm thinking, okay, good job we're doing this then. So basically, I just researched on the internet about King Charles I, just printed off some information, and then what I did was, if I can find it here for you, is he had to talk about the things King Charles did to upset Parliament and the things Parliament did to upset the King. So with the research I just read, I kind of put it in a concise, well, I thought for me, into some kind of concise mind map. I don't know how well you can see that, guys, about the mistakes King Charles made. And what it did, it made the thoughts concise for me. And of course, I was learning myself. And then I kind of taught it through this. And he kind of just summed it all up, and he seemed to like that. And then, once we'd discussed it and just chatted about it, he then put it in his own format. And actually, he did it in a better way than me, because he actually did 2 columns. He did one side, the things King Charles upset, how he upsets the Parliament, and how on the other side, the things Parliament, how they upset King Charles I. So what was quite nice was, you know, we just chatted about it for 10 minutes, went through the concise notes I'd made, went through that for 10 minutes, and then he was really, and then maybe even as I was going through it, he was already putting some of them down. And actually, the whole task took a maximum of 20 minutes. And what is really interesting is the fact that he seemed to just really enjoy it. Now, I think it actually was irrelevant, the subject content. I could have been talking to him about goodness knows what. But what it is, it's about the fact that you are giving them your undivided attention. And that's the thing I noticed. They seem to thrive off the most. They kind of say, oh, I don't want to do it. But actually, when they get into it, you can see them really starting to engage. And what I do is I really restrict it to 15 minutes if I can. I mean, sometimes if we really get into stuff, I kind of let it run over a little bit. But the reality is, especially when I first started doing this, I would literally say, okay, we're starting at 10, we will stop at 15:15. And wherever we were at 10:15, I stopped it. I never wanted them to think that it was just going to go on and on and on. Because the minute they feel that, they just want to give up, don't they? And it starts to become a bit of a battle and a fight. But if they know it's only 15 minutes, they're much more willing to engage in it, because they know it's not going to go on forever. And especially if you can do it with the reward. Brilliant. If you do 15 minutes with me now, of course you can go on Xbox, PlayStation, whatever it might be, that you is a good reward that you feel is favourable for your son or daughter. Now, my other son, who's slightly older, he is going to be taking his GCSEs this time next year. So I'm already starting to get him prepared for that. As bonkers as that might sound, but the way I find that drip feed effect of just 15 minutes at a time is so much better than spending hours. So, you know, I don't know the ins and outs of all the specifications for the exam papers. Some of them I've been able to trawl off the internet. And for example, his religious studies GCSE, he took a year early. And that was a brilliant opportunity because it really kind of laid it out for him what the expectations are. And I put together a whole file with all the areas that he needed to study, and we kind of worked through it together. Being the first time, I really wanted to show him how to structure himself, how to organise himself. So for example, these ones at the moment aren't quite as important as obviously as his GCSEs, but he is going back to school to take some termly assessments. And you know, the reality is you want them to do as best they can so they feel good about themselves. So I said to him, which subject shall we do? And he said, oh, we'll do physical education. I said, great. And all I did was pick up the textbook. And I said, is there an area you want to learn? He said, oh, no, Mum, just choose an area. And I just randomly opened the book. And as it was the structure, just, you know, it's just a school exercise book that they're following for their exam. And you can ask your teacher for this. The structure and function of cardiorespiratory system. So what I did was I just chatted through what was on the page, basically reading bits out and skimming the bits that were a little bit thinking, oh, I don't really probably need to go into that area so much. And then after I talked to him for about 10 minutes, I then said, okay, So you have explained to me the respiratory system, so can you now just put it in a flowchart? And then he just came up with this. Now literally it took him 5 minutes, but you know what I'm really pleased about is the fact that when I said a flowchart, he kind of took it in his own creative way, and he started up here with the nose and mouth and did it like the trachea. And I don't know if you can see this, but he split it into two sides. You've got a right and left lung on there. Now, interestingly enough, obviously this lung is identical to this lung. So he's actually, without him kind of realising in some ways, he's repeated the learning. Now, if you'd ask him to do it once and do it again, well, you'd get no chance. But actually, he was self-driven. And the key points here is that firstly, I let him choose the subject. Secondly, I let him choose which area of the subject that he wanted. And then thirdly, I said to him, okay, we've talked about that, now do it in some kind of flowchart. And he was able to create it in his own way and take ownership for it. And it's kind of a win-win. And the biggest thing I notice again is that engagement. Because he only knew it was 15 minutes, it was great. And actually you can see them get into it. And as I said previously, I actually think sometimes it's irrelevant which subject you're doing, whether they like that subject or not. They do engage because they love the fact that you are giving them your undivided attention. And each time I do it, I notice more and more as they engage in it. I try and vary it up. Sometimes for his physics formulas, I'll put them on cards and we'll do match pairs or things like that. Even though he's 15 years old, I still need to constantly be thinking about making it, you know, visual, kinesthetic and audio, so that he doesn't tire and kind of get bored of things. But you know what, this half term, 15 minutes, you know, even I can find 15 minutes, and trust me, my schedule's really busy. But I would really recommend just give it a go. Just do it really randomly, you know, an opportunity that you see, and say, let them choose the subject and just grab a page in the textbook and just go for it. So guys, that's what we've been doing this half-term holiday. 15-minute slots here and there for different subjects. You don't need to do that. You could just have to do one session. You know, there's other things that they can be doing in their half-term holiday rather than just revising and studying. But actually, for me, it's not so much about that. It's about the engagement on a one-to-one and how they realise that they feel so valued and important because I'm willing to give up all that time and give it to them undivided, you know, that I give them my undivided attention. And it's really fascinating to observe them and see how they grow in confidence. Obviously, I'm very careful that I'm non-judgmental with it. So if I, for example, today when we were talking about the respiratory system, I said, oh, so tell me what you know about it. And of course, then I would just go after he'd explained it. Cool, gosh, that's, you know quite a lot of stuff. Let's just refer to the textbook now and see what that says. And then, of course, what am I doing? If he said anything kind of, he's missed out particular terms or not quite got something, I'm kind of teaching it back to him. And without that kind of, you know, judging him, saying you've got it wrong. It's all about really wanting them to feel good about themselves and actually just let it be an enjoyable 15 minutes. You know, I highly recommend it. And you know what? Just give it a go. And hopefully you won't get any kind of battles, but if you do, leave it and maybe try another time and see how it works. But remember, only 15 minutes. Okay, guys, I hope that's given you a few kind of little tips to think, what should we do in this half-term break? And look forward to seeing you again soon. See you later.